Welcome to the Career Change Podcast, where you'll discover the frank and practical advice and resources that are already proven to work in the real world when it comes to changing careers or figuring out what business is right for you when you are a smart but likely also stuck, overwhelmed or overthinking person in your mid-30s, your 40s, your mid-50s. I'm your host, Rikke Hansen, a career change advisor, entrepreneur and former corporate HR professional with over 15 years experience of helping thousands of people just like you identify or create careers or businesses that are both meaningful and future-proof. Welcome home. Hey, it's Rikke here. Welcome to episode 39 of the Career Change Podcast. Let's talk about the kryptonite keeping you stuck in the job you want to leave. Now, I've had so many requests from you, my dear listeners, to record an episode about how to make sure you don't waste another year again and don't make that change. So if you also don't want to get to the end of another year again and still be stuck in that career or job or profession you so badly want to leave behind, then this is the episode for you. Because it's time to get honest about what role you might play in that ongoing delay yourself by getting clear about what you are most consistently doing with your time, your energy, and your resources, doing those recurring pockets of time that you do have or can make available for your career change. In other words, let's figure out what the kryptonite is that consistently keeps you stuck in the career or the job you so badly want to leave behind and that you might even hate. And the more years you've been wanting to change careers or started that business, the longer you've been wanting to do this, the more years you wasted until now, the more important it is for you to be brutally honest about this kryptonite. So you can see it for what it is, and you can commit to changing those tendencies, those kryptonite tendencies, to make sure your career change actually becomes inevitable rather than just something you keep sabotaging. Okay? What I also will say is that this episode, it pairs really well with the episode just before this. So episode 38, which is all around having that one priority. So if you haven't listened to episode 38, then do listen to that afterwards because they go really well together. And episode 38 is called The Only Thing to Focus on This Year if you want to change careers. Okay, so just something to note. I want to make sure we get a double whammy of, super helpful stuff here. Now, I also thought of an alternative title for this particular episode. And if there was an alternative title, it would likely be How to Stop Those Groundhog Tendencies of Yours that consistently steal time, resources, and energy away from your career change and that keeps you stuck in the job you hate for years or decades. So yes, we've set the tone for this episode. It's going to be very frank and direct Rikke style. Okay, so talking about self-sabotage. We humans, we just have such a nasty tendency to self-sabotage and get in our own way consistently. Have you noticed? I often talk about this on the Career Change Podcast, but here's the thing. I often see aspiring career changers and aspiring entrepreneurs wasting a lot of time distracting themselves away from these self-sabotage tendencies by adding things and activities and goals and resolutions on top of this already shaky foundation of self-sabotage, instead of actually actively facing these self-sabotage tendencies head on and learning how to handle them and eliminating them as much as possible. Because if you don't, no wonder you're still stuck. No wonder you're not getting any results. And I want to give it a very sort of obvious analogy here that I think is really going to make this clear. As an analogy, there is no point in you starting to go to the gym in an effort to get really fit and really healthy and feel really good about yourself if you also don't look at and get honest about the fact that you're stuffing your face with pizza and donut and beer and wine and vodka 4 days a week, and address the fact that you're only getting 4 or 5 hours out of sleep at night. right? You need to do that too in order to actually get results. You get my point. We're going to find the career change equivalent of that for you. Because let me be frank with you, when it comes, and this is something I've seen again and again, and it's really important to know when it comes to career change or when it comes to starting the right business, especially when you're a smart person in your mid-30s, your 40s, your 50s, you would actually consistently get the fastest and most concrete results and changes if you first look at and get really honest about what you actually need to stop doing first, rather than just adding some faffy resolution or pretty planner or vague goal onto a foundation that is already shaky. So what I really want to do with you in this episode, because it can be really hard doing by yourself, so I'll help you with this, is to help you identify your career change equivalent of donuts and lack of sleep. And that is what I call your career change kryptonite. And there are several layers for us to address. So in this episode, we want to talk about what is the kryptonite that keeps getting in the way of you taking consistent action, of you getting results. What is it that keeps making you procrastinate on your career change or on your business again and again and again? It's time for some meaningful, brutal honesty. And I've got 3 very concrete strategies for how you can do this. So let's quickly run through them and then we'll go through them step by step. So strategy number 1 is to be brutally honest. What is your career change kryptonite? Strategy number 2 is to watch out for consistency stealers. And strategy number 3 is to write your kryptonite list and use it to motivate you. So if you've been wanting to change careers or start your own business for years, but it hasn't happened yet, and you don't want to get to the end of another year and still be stuck, then keep listening. I've got loads of good stuff for you here. So let's go straight into strategy number 1. Be brutally honest. What is your career change kryptonite? So what is it that keeps getting in the way for you? Let's identify it. This kryptonite thing, career change kryptonite. You really need to be aware of the kryptonite that you keep sabotaging yourself with and that keeps getting in the way of you taking consistent action on your career change. And what I mean by this is when it comes to those pockets of time that you want and need to invest in your career change in order to create consistency and momentum and therefore results, whenever you actually do have or make the time available that you could spend on your career change or on your own business, what is it that you consistently choose to blow it on or spend it on instead? Let's get really clear about what that kryptonite, that something else is for you. And I really like to call it kryptonite to point out just how weakening and dangerous it is to your career change efforts and to your result. But if it's more helpful for you with another word, then maybe you can replace kryptonite with avoidance or buffering or procrastination tendencies. You know, those patterns of behavior that you consistently default to instead of investing that vital time working on your career change or your own business. And it's key that you know what your kryptonite or avoidance tendencies are so you can spot the patterns, the recurring patterns, and handle them before you default to them. And here's an interesting thing. So let me just catch you out here if that's you. You know, I often people, they come to me because they want a more meaningful career or they want their work to truly matter. But interestingly, those people are often the ones that when it actually comes down to creating that thing, to taking action or creating that new career or that new business, those people oftenly, consistently, instead, they default to easy in the moment over meaningful over time when it actually comes to their self-sabotage tendencies and how they spend their time. So here's what I mean by that. And be careful if you fall into this too. When it comes to work on the workshop, for example, that they want to offer to start testing their new business, or when it comes to calling that key contact they know they want to call to expand their network, in that moment, when it comes to actually investing that time and taking those actions, it's easier to default to watching the newest episode of Stranger Things or reruns of Game of Thrones instead, right? Or to check out social media. It's easier to do that rather than investing time creating that workshop or picking up the phone and calling that person. If you see yourself in that, this episode is definitely for you, right? How about you? Can you relate to do what I call choosing easy and comfortable in the moment over choosing to create something that will be meaningful for the future, to create something that's actually going to create meaning in your future? So you want to ask yourself, what do I do when I default to easy or comfortable instead of meaningful? You see what I'm getting at here? So let's identify your kryptonite. And what I want you to do is this. And you want to do this after this episode. You want to sit down with a piece of paper or your iPad or however you do these kind of brainstorming things. And you also want to have access to a calendar, or where you track what you actually spend your time outside of work doing, whether it's digital or paper, or bring anything where you log what you spend your time on, outside of work, family commitments. It might be a diary, or if you use Instagram to document it, or funny enough, social media, whatever it is. And then let's identify your kryptonite. I want you to start by reviewing the last 12 months. But if you've been wanting to change career for a lot longer, you can also go further out than that, zoom out even further backwards to spot recurring patterns. And I want you to identify with that time that you did and could have made available to work in your career change, where did your available time go? And remember, we're talking about the time outside of your work, your non-negotiable work and family commitments. Where did your time, money, energy, and resources go most consistently, those pockets of time? So whatever is going to help you remind you of that, bring it out. And here's the thing, if it wasn't your career transition that you spend time on most consistently, doing those pockets of time that we all have available or can make available, that we can invest in our time, in our career change, then what was it? What was it that kept going into those pockets of time that accumulatively could have resulted in your career change or your business by now? Let me just say that to make you realize what has actually happened. What is it that kept going in to those pockets of time that accumulatively could have resulted in you being in a new career or new business by now? That's how important this exercise is. You could be somewhere else now if you invested that time differently. But what did you do? What did you do? You probably stuffed those pockets of time with something else. So if this sounds familiar and I'm hitting the spot here, then you need to identify what is the kryptonite that most consistently stole your dreams. That is the level of severity we're talking about here. And I really want to keep talking about these pockets of time because they're really the lifetime for your career change, but we often forget about that in the moment. Time is the only thing that you have to work on to make your career transition inevitable. You need to spend time identifying, creating that career, that business to replace the job you hate or don't enjoy with. It's not going to happen. And time is what it takes to do that. And that's why those pockets of time are so important. There are the time pockets that you already have available outside of key work and family commitments, and also the pockets of time that you additionally make available if something truly matters more to you than what you're currently choosing to spend them on or fill them with. So what have you, or are you still spending or wasting those pockets of time on that you do have or can make available on instead of spending them on working on your career change or your own business? Write that down. Now, for most people, the top layer of kryptonite tends to be things like stress or doom scrolling or social media gobbling. This is you if your phone and Instagram, Facebook kind of feels like an extension of your body. You got that phantom limb of your phone. It could also be news addiction. Here's the thing, the news wants you to think that every single development is your problem and you have to deal with it right now. Have you noticed? That's why it's so dangerous. So just those are often the top layers. For you, it might be something else. But what I know for my clients, a lot of that time was spent stress, doom scrolling, social media gobbling, news addiction, all of that. Just think about what is the obvious thing that you default to, and then start writing down your contenders. Identifying them, name them, be brutally honest. What I also want to make clear is what kryptonite is not. Kryptonite is not when your child's school was cancelled, or there was a train strike or whatever it is, and you had to spend a lot more time on childcare. That is not kryptonite. That is you doing what you need to do. Also, kryptonite is not if you got the flu or if you had an illness or you had an ongoing health issue, something that was a totally valid thing that you needed to spend your time, valuable time on. What we are talking about are the buffering things that you do, the distraction things that you do, those procrastination tendencies that you have, that you keep falling into again and again and again and wasting your time on. Anything but having to face your real career change issues, right? It's when you choose immediate pleasure or ease or easy over investing in your future career, over investing right now in creating something to replace the job you want to leave behind with. So be brutally honest. Strategy number 1, what is your career change kryptonite? Then we move on to strategy number 2. Watch out for consistency stealers. Now, kryptonite tendencies, they are really sneaky. And the more intelligent you are, the better you'll generally be at self-deception. So you need to work harder at spotting your self-sabotage patterns. I'm talking to you here. So let's go deeper when it comes to identifying your kryptonite and look for the more sneaky ones. And for some of you listening, that means you want to watch out for what I call the consistency stealers. Now, I just want to note up front before we go into this number 2 strategy, this strategy will not be applicable to everyone. It really depends on your family, your health, or your financial circumstances. But some of you will listen to this strategy number 2, and you will feel very seen. You will feel like I'm inside of your head and inside of your diary for the last couple of years. So this one is for you. Now, you've heard me talk before, if you're a regular listener of the Career Change podcast, you've heard me talk before about the start, stop loop of doom. That many aspiring career changers and, aspiring entrepreneurs, they repeatedly find themselves in, where you start your career change and then something happens. You stop, you put it on hold, then you start again, then something happens, you stop, you put on hold, and on and on and on it goes. If you haven't changed careers yet, you are in that loop very likely. Well, guess what? Consistency stealers are often what leads to the stop part of that loop. For you stopping or putting your career change on hold. And when they do that, that is when they act as kryptonite. Now, consistency stealers might be innocent looking on the surface, and they're not necessarily bad in themselves. They can be great or in small doses, but when used or fallen into accumulatively and repeatedly and as a way of escaping from your real issues, and when they consistently take time and resources away from your career change, they act as kryptonite. They act as kryptonite, and they take and steal the consistency of action and focus over a period of time. And the thing is, that consistency and focus over a period of time, that is key to making your career change or your own business a reality. Because time is, after all you have to work with when it comes to that career change, right? And a big consistency stealer for many of my full-time corporate clients, it tends to be what I call escapist traveling. It's things like weekends or days or weeks away, of escapist traveling, preceded by planning periods, and then also followed by periods of recovering from those trips. It can also be massive Netflix binges or breaking news binges, depending on what's going on, right? Where they sort of catch you and then keep you there. It can also be things like what I call a never-ending cycle of procrastination development, where you go into this rabbit hole of self-development courses or books that don't translate into any real life changes or career changes. And also what I would say, these consistency stealers and kryptonite full stop is also very important for you to be aware of if you're a perfectionist. Because consistency stealers are the perfect procrastination tool for perfectionists, because you can't fail at them and you don't have to get out of your comfort zone or risk anything. So they feel safe. They're pretty much the opposite of what you might worry that your career change effort will feel like when you actually do it. So beware here. And remember, when it comes to things like traveling, it's not just the time that you spend traveling, that you spend on those escape weekends away or trips away or recurring ones, but it's also the time that you spend planning that foodie trip to Paris with your girlfriends or your mates, all that time you spend on Pinterest and Instagram and, all that research you do. And then it's also all of the time, the days and weeks that you spend recovering from those trips, or rather, you never allow yourself to recover because it's right into the daily grind once you're back. Hence why you need another escape trip. Ooh, what's next? Cinnamon bun hunting in Stockholm, or art trips in Los Angeles, or a series of 3 weekends in Byron Bay for my Australians. And then, there's also that season 3 of Netflix series to catch up on. Phew, on and on it goes. Are you exhausted yet? No wonder if you don't actually feel like working on your career change, because you've already spent your time, money, and energy resources on the consistency stealers. You end up spending your weekends on consistency stealers, right? Only to find yourself back at the job you hate on Monday, totally exhausted and not properly rested from that time away, which in itself also means that you're more likely to fall into the top-line kryptonite tendencies like scrolling, social media, or news gobbling, because you're too zonked to work on your career change, right? That's so important to be aware of. So rather than actually spending time solving your career change problem, you then start planning to go away on another trip, and then spend time planning that and going away and recovering from that, and again and again and again. Do you see the start, stop wheel of doom in action here? It's really important for you to be aware of. And like I say, there's nothing bad in them as per se. It's when they're repeatedly used to steal time, energy, money away from your career change efforts. When they initiate that stop part of the doom, the doom wheel again. And I really see a lot of people, that's what they fall into. When they look back over their calendars, they're like, oh yeah, that was the time I was in Copenhagen. Oh, that was the time I was in New York. Or, oh, that was that cookery course in Arizona, or survival trip in Montana, or whatever it was. Oh yeah, that was that time I was zonked. It might be worth looking at your Netflix or HBO usage. And oh yeah, that was that Breaking Bad marathon, or my Glee revival, or whatever it was, right? Plus all the time spent researching and recovering, rather than actually consistently dedicating more of those pockets of time to consistently work on your career change. By the way, going through your calendar, through all of that, did you actually see any recurring slots for consistently working on your career change in your calendar? Just something to think about. Here's the thing, traveling and weekends away can be great. I love traveling. I'm a citizen of the world, and Netflix series can be epic. That's not what we're talking about here. But when you have a key priority in your life, which if you want to change careers, your career change should be the only priority in your life right now, outside of, those non-negotiable commitments of work and family. When you have this, then your career change must come first before anything else consistently. You want to listen to the priority episode of episode 38, because it's so important that you got to put in context that if your career change is your biggest priority right now, then you got to be very, very careful with not doing too many of those consistency stealers, all right? And here's the real thing. I'm not sharing any of this to tell you off. I don't need to do that. You're probably already doing that with yourself. But I know from having worked very closely with hundreds of clients over the years that escapist traveling and not allowing consistent time to work on their career change consistently was what pushed back their career change, their own business by years. And I almost get emotional talking about these. I've had people, when they realize this, getting really angry at themselves. Why did I waste all that time of just escapist things, consistency stealers and kryptonite, and then going back to the job I hated on Monday and then stopping again and again? I know that they were upset of having wasted so many years of their life to just not facing the real issues. So I don't want that to be you. I really want you to change and to realize that if you really want to change careers or start your business, then you have to focus on that number one priority and not keep escaping from your problems. Consistency, my friend, consistency of career change actions is the antidote to the start-stop loop of doom. So get honest about how you spend your time so far. So you can be in charge of it going forward and make more meaningful choices again and again and again and create more meaning rather than keep escaping from it. All right. So when people, they tell me they've been wanting to change for a while, but it hasn't happened yet, this is what we want to look at identifying. Those consistency stealers so you can stop doing them, or at least do them in very small doses. And you can get consistency with your career change instead. So replace consistency stealers with career change consistency. And remember, you can still watch Netflix or scroll media or go on escape trips or do whatever you want, but only once you've done the work on your priority first and doing it consistently and it doesn't interrupt it. Okay, so strategy number 2, watch out for consistency stealers, which brings us to the final strategy. Strategy number 3, write your kryptonite list and use it to motivate you. So let's do this right after you finish this podcast episode. I want you to identify and write down your 2 to 3 biggest kryptonite tendencies or buffering, avoidance, procrastination tendencies. You probably already have them at the top of your head. Maybe you have one big one and just want to focus on that. Okay. Don't write more than 3. Don't want to scatter yourself too thinly. And most of us really only have between 1 and 2 and possibly 3. What are the things, the 2 to 3 things that you consistently do that consistently steals away the time and energy and resources that you really ought to have spent on your real career change or on starting that business instead? And remember, it might be the top layer things, top layer kryptonite, stress, doom scrolling, social media, news gobbling, or it might be more the bigger consistency stealers like the escapist trips, the repeated escapist trips, or recovery from that, or the down the rabbit Netflix or news gobbles, or the procrastination development. Write it down. And don't just write that list and get rid of it. No. Keep it handy. And once you've done it, once you've written that down, I want you to take some time and really get brutally honest with yourself. And I really want you to feel this. Let's turn these insights into motivation so we can actually get you out of the job you hate. Look at your kryptonite. I want you to look at your kryptonite and you want to just see it for what it truly is. Kryptonite is your dream stealers. That's what they are. Your kryptonite is very much the reason why you haven't changed careers yet. That kryptonite is very much the reason why you haven't started that business yet. I really want you to feel that and to get that. Do you really want to continue giving your dreams away to that kryptonite? That kryptonite is what is keeping you stuck in that job you want to leave behind. Let's make this insight matter. And let's make them power your transition. Let's make them lead you to behavioral change. Unless, of course, you still want to be stuck this time next year. You know what's so sad about most kinds of kryptonite, especially the top layer ones? They offer no meaningful return on investment for you. They offer no meaning, no ongoing, results for you. They don't even make you feel better for very long. So whatever it is that you use to sabotage or distract or procrastinate with, I really want you to think about that. All that time and resource and money that you invest in your kryptonite, they don't even give you an ongoing, meaningful return on investment. They just make you feel worse. They make you trust yourself less. They make you feel less confident because you keep letting yourself down. And that is why they are so, so dangerous. They are what keep you stuck in that job you hate. There is no genuine return on investment on those kryptonite things outside of the moment. And that was in that moment where they actually robbed you of a meaningful future. So how you spend your time, those pockets of time we can all make available to a transition, how you spend them, no matter how little that time bubble is, how you consistently spend those time bubbles or pockets, it is so key. Because how you spend your time most consistently when it comes to those pockets will show you what your true priority is. And also it is what will create the life you live day to day. And it's also what will create the new career or the new business to replace the job you don't want with or not. And here's the truth. When it comes to what it really takes to change careers or to start the right business. If you want to change anything in your life, you need to change something in your daily life, your weekly life, your monthly life. You need consistency. Consistency is the most important factor when it comes to nailing that transition, especially after 35. And here's the thing with Kryptonite. You've probably been super consistent with doing the Kryptonite thing, right? You kept scrolling, you kept gobbling up Instagram, you kept doing all of the distraction stuff, the weekends away, the escape trips, traveling and all of that, the stress scrolling. Look at the corresponding results. You just look at how consistent you've been with your Kryptonite. But what's been the result of all of that? What has it really given you? You need to start replacing what you most consistently do with career change action instead. Just imagine the results if you do that. To use those pockets of time differently, to spend those pockets of time to create that career change or to create that business instead of defaulting to Kryptonite. Now, here's a practical question, or here's a practical way that you can do that. I like to give this to my clients. I'll share it with you. I call it the Kryptonite antidote question. So here's how this goes. I'm going to give you something really practical here towards the end. So next time you have that pocket of time available or coming up, and you feel tempted to go down that Kryptonite rabbit hole, right? You feel almost like your phone vibrating in your pocket like a phantom limb, right? Then I want you to ask yourself next time you're tempted to default to Kryptonite, ask yourself, what will make me feel most powerful right now? What will make me feel most powerful right now? Or you can also ask yourself, what's the most meaningful thing for me to do right now? And then act accordingly. And what I can tell you, the answer to those two questions will never, ever be your Kryptonite, especially not the day-to-day Kryptonite, because your Kryptonite does not empower you and it will never make you feel more powerful. The thing that will make you feel the most powerful is doing that one thing for your transition that you already promised yourself you would do, even if it's just 25 minutes to an hour, 3 times a week initially, and then you up that over time. Consistency is what matters most over time. And after that, you can do whatever you want. But use this Kryptonite list to motivate you. Look at what your Kryptonite is and see them for what they truly are. Dream stealers. Now, let's wrap this up. So strategy number 1 is to be brutally honest. What is your career change Kryptonite? And then strategy number 2, watch out for consistency stealers. If that's you, you really want to be honest here, because that will keep you stuck and exhausted for long. And strategy number 3, write your Kryptonite list and use it to motivate you. So promise me you will write this Kryptonite list. Be brutally, meaningfully honest. This is a line in the sand moment. And then what I want you to do right now for me, just imagine, I want you to future pace here over the coming months. Imagine if you are as consistent and regular with your career change actions as you've been with your Kryptonite. Imagine if you start being as regular and consistent with spending that time, investing that time in your career change and building that business again and again and again. Imagine if you're just as regular as you've been with your Kryptonite tendencies. Imagine the results and the momentum you'll get. So here's what you need to do. Commit to become a person who most consistently chooses to create for the future and to create meaning over defaulting to what's easy or comfortable in the moment. That, my friend, is how you will finally stop the start, stop loop of doom and keep going. And most importantly, be able to leave that job behind, or that career behind, or that profession behind, because you've invested enough time and effort and money consistently in creating a meaningful career or business to replace that job with. Only time, energy, and money invested again and again will help you create that new career, that new business. So use those resources wisely. Don't let your Kryptonite rob you of a meaningful life, both now and in the near future. So I'll see you over at thecareerchangepodcast.com. Make sure you're subscribed to my list over at thecareerchangepodcast.com. And let's make this the year that you create meaning rather than default to kryptonite. Thank you so much for listening. Cheers.